Peter Conference year 17. My name is Vasily Tolstoy and I'm a member of programming committee of the conference, and I'm here with Mr. Christian Brauner. Christian.
Hi.
So, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure. I'm Christian Brauner. I work as a software engineer and currently basically upstream for LXD and LXC and a lot of other container-related stuff, kernel, glibc. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Okay, great. So you're a real maintainer.
Yeah.
Magic people. Magic people around us. It's not the usual thing to see the real maintainer, and we have not much of them in Russian Federation. So we have a few in the conference.
Yeah.
Look at our conference. Visit our conference. Our conference is good.
It is really good. Like one of the most technical conferences I've been to. Like really, really top notch.
So you were giving a talk at the conference, probably even two.
Yeah, I was giving 2 talks.
Can you compress it 100 times and tell what it was about?
Oh, yeah, I'll try to. So first of all, I talked about system containers, I guess, which is, I guess, one of the oldest forms of containers, and I think you face a lot of interesting challenges when you implement system containers, especially within the Linux kernel, because it actually doesn't have a concept of a container, and then also you want to run a whole distribution or like init system basically inside of the container, and like an init process is a very privileged process, so you run into all kinds of problems. And the talk was basically about what are the problems and what can we do and what did we do in liblxc and in LXD to circumvent these problems. And the second talk was about mixing, I guess more on the low-level side, mixing different C group file systems, because by now we have like C group B1 and C group B2, and we have init binaries who understand C group B2, and we have init binaries who don't understand C group B2. And as a system container runtime, we want to, for example, run a container that doesn't understand the C group B2 hierarchy, like this new version, inside of a container while on the host having mounted a C group B2 hierarchy. And to some extent they are incompatible, and so this is also an interesting challenge, especially for us. And this talk was basically about what can we do and how can we solve this problem for us. Yeah, I guess these are, in short, 2 talks. Short.
The good thing, they both coexist and live together on the same machine.
Yeah.
Which is basically a feat of compatibility.
Yeah.
My next question is a standard one.
Yeah.
Please tolerate it. What interesting things, just your personal opinion,
yeah.
What interesting things had happened last year?
In the Linux community, you mean?
Probably in the technical world, as a wish.
I'm more on the low-level side of things, so that this is usually stuff that is pretty interesting to me. Like, for example, if we go back to the C group example, the CPU set controller has been implemented recently, and it's going to be I guess released soon. So that was a lot of interesting stuff has happened on the kernel side. Like in general, for example, the kernel self-protection project, which also friends of mine work on, that basically try to do proper kernel hardening. It looks like it's taking off, and it's actually quite a challenge. And so for me, these are the interesting bits that are happening right now in the technical world. I mean, there is also, of course, a lot of talk going on about orchestration, and there is Kubernetes, and there is there's a lot of good stuff also going on in this area. But I'm more of a fan of the low-level technical side. And so I think the cool things are, for example, this kernel self-protection project.
The old school is the best.
Yeah.
What do you feel? Is there any current running hype? What is hype today?
Oh, what is hip today? I think, yeah, well, we talked about this briefly. Orchestration is like the new big thing that is on the agenda, like Kubernetes, which is totally fine. Container orchestration, I guess, is right now one of the big buzzwords, like how to large scale manage big clusters of containers. And to some extent, we are touching with LXD on, like, sort of into the, or we're not going in the same direction, but we also do container orchestration, like for system containers. We can spawn like thousands of of containers, for example.
So this is the thing with which people push and with which they praise and so on. You work for Canonical,
Yeah.
am I right? So I can safely ask you this sleazy question.
Safely.
Probably, I think. Safely ask the following question. There is a rumors and there is a feeling that there is a kind of cold war between Red Hat and Docker in the field of controlling the containers. Like Red Hat presents more and more about how they can control the thing without this nasty Docker and do things better and do things at least well. And it seems that it's a how to say, directed process. Can you comment on that?
I'm not a political person at all, and that's really things that I'm not interested in. Like if people are sort of fighting about stuff like that, maybe, but it's really something I'm not going to dive into, I guess. What I'm usually, like my experience, for example, is when I work with engineers from different projects, like a good friend of mine, Alexa, is working at SUSE. It's one of my former companies I've worked for before going to Canonical, and he's working on Run C. When we have a technical discussion, it's a technical discussion about the problem that we want to get fixed and that we want to get solved. If I work with upstream, if I send patches to systemd, to Leonard, who is working on Red Hat, then it's a technical discussion that's going on. We're going to settle this, and it's usually like a fantastic experience. Every time I worked with Red Hat guys, for example, Florian Weimar, who is a glibc maintainer, great guy, it was really like a positive experience. And so the politics side may exist, but on the engineering level, I just don't care about it, because the people I work with are usually great, and the company really doesn't matter, I have to say.
Probably it's a great thing about Linux community in general. It's a fine example of that. So there is a politics and there is the engineering part, which works nicely and friendly and so on. Speaking about the community, what do you think? Do we as a community have to do some, to go the extra mile to bring new people in the community? Should it be a process which somebody is responsible for with the agenda and stuff, or just happens by itself? And it's okay.
We should definitely encourage a broader range of people. So I can first of all, I want to say, like, for example, how I got into tech was basically I started in my free time contributing to liblxc, like writing patches for it, because I like C programming and it seemed an interesting problem. And then basically Serge and Serge Hallen and Stefan Graba basically guided me into this sort of even like ever more into the technical side. They sort of were really helpful. They answered a lot of questions. They gave me tasks to work on and so on. But it wasn't like a controlled way of like this is how you get into tech. It just somehow happened, which is probably fine. But yes, I agree. There should be some sort of process to make like the entry barrier into tech as low as possible, and especially for minorities and especially women. Like this is, I think, one of the saddest parts, but it's sad insofar as going to a lot of technical conferences or working on lower level stuff, for example. Usually you don't get to work with a lot of women, and this is a real problem that we should somehow that we should address. And I was actually very happy that I was approached by a computer science student from the University of St. Petersburg asking about work she could do on liblxc, and that's a pretty great experience. I'm like, yes, that's how it should happen. But we need more of that, and we need to find ways to, first of all, discuss this, address this topic in general, and then find solutions to how to actually make this work. I can just say personally, for me, what I try to do is, no matter where you come from, and as I said before, I don't care about the company, I don't care what you basically, to some extent, do in your private life. If you're into tech, and you want to have an interesting problem to work on, I try to help you as best as I can. And I think, yeah, that's at least what I try to be like. I don't know if I'm good or succeeding at it, but At least I try.
Which is good in a way, of course. But I definitely I believe that you're good. At least you are speaking with that level of passion, which shows that it should be good. Again, just a personal opinion.
Yeah.
Could be quite biased. What is the book, the video, or the set of videos, the person's blog, any set of material which anyone should definitely get hands-on, read, or at least browse through?
Oh, technical or in general? Oh, technical. Oh, that's interesting. Funny enough, I recently the memory barriers file in the Linux kernel documentation subsystem. Just because like I recently ran into a problem in this area and I was reading this file and it was like super helpful. I have to say I don't particularly look for tech books. I usually, if I have a problem and then I'm going to do a deep dive into it by looking at all kinds of materials. But I think the best book is always the source. Reading source code and actually talking to people who have written the code is the best way of learning it. Like especially for example kernel code. I don't think there is a really good book that introduces you to a specific concept in the Linux kernel. The only way you can do it is basically read the source code, read the documentation, go to conferences, and speak to the people who work on this stuff. So I'm probably not good at giving advice for specific books, I have to say. I'm sorry.
But it's also advice to read the code, to read the specific documentation file. Ladies and gentlemen, you all have probably remembered about the specific documentation file. The world's wisdom, according to Mr. Brauner, is there. Read it.
I'm not wise. I'm just a Muppet with an opinion.
We got you, you're wise. Going along the same lines, let's imagine that all the people who are interested to go into Linux and basically in tech and programming are behind this camera, looking at us. What would you say to them? To encourage or to guide?
Don't be afraid, first of all, of the tech community, I guess. Second of all, don't be discouraged. There will be like arguments and discussions coming your way that won't necessarily be pleasant, but it's usually worth it, and most people you get to work with, at least in my experience, are actually nice to work with. So don't be afraid. Take the first step, write, like send patches, ask questions, and have fun.
Thank you.
Thanks.